On 5 News, Theresa May at the White House. She arrives for talks with President Donald Trump, becoming the first world leader to meet him. Also, a record number of urgent operations cancelled in a year. This man has cancer. His procedure has already been delayed twice.
You've obviously always got the fear that while the tumour's still inside, that it could break out.
The mother of a 4-year-old girl killed by a lorry describes her loss as 2 men are jailed. And Antoinette get gongs from Prince Charles and tell us they'd love to see him in the jungle.
A very outdoorsy type.
With all the flora and fauna, so he'd be in his element.
He'd be all right on those challenges?
Oh yeah,
he'd
be really
done
good.
worse.
We got to know him a
I
bit.
don't know that for fact.
What do you know?
Welcome to 5 News, I'm Julian Drucker. As we come on air, Theresa May is in the White House meeting President Donald Trump. She's the first foreign leader to have face-to-face talks with America's new president. The Prime Minister hopes to discuss a possible trade deal for when Britain leaves the EU and strike up her own special relationship with Mr Trump. Well, our political editor Andy Bell is at the White House for us. Andy, a hugely significant moment for Theresa May.
It is, Julian. She just arrived in the last few moments. She drove in with her motorcade. She went not to the usual north door, but she went just behind me down to the door of the West Wing, and she was greeted at the door there by President Trump. Now, these two world leaders are certainly very different personalities, but as Theresa May said to us yesterday, you know, sometimes opposites attract. And whatever their differences, you can be sure that the British Prime Minister is here to ensure that on her watch, what is so often called the special relationship is renewed.
At the National Cemetery at Arlington today, Theresa May paid her respects. There are British troops buried here among so many Americans. And on this trip, the Prime Minister's emphasised that theme of common sacrifice and shared global leadership. There should be no more wars, she said, to make countries in our own image, a reference to Iraq. But nor should America and Britain just stand idly by.
Our two countries together have a responsibility to lead, because when others step up as we step back, it is bad for America, for Britain and the world.
In her speech to Republican congressmen, there were references to Churchill, to Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan, and one phrase she returned to again and again.
Special relationship, special relationship, special relationship, our special relationship, special relationship, the special relationship between two countries.
But some of the things this president has said have worried Theresa May. His warmer attitude to Russia, his suggestion that NATO is obsolete. And he's worried plenty of his own citizens too. These demonstrators were outside the Republican Party gathering where both he and the Prime Minister spoke.
I hope that we can keep trade relations good. I hope that America and Britain, I know we've been allies for a really long time. I hope we can stay that way.
Do you worry things might change with him?
Yes. Yes, I am. With everyone. Not just Britain, but the entire world.
What do you think she should say to him?
Be real, Donald. Get with the program. Let's go what's best for everyone.
Do you think he might listen?
Not a chance.
But Donald Trump's allies in Congress, the people who'll vote on a trade deal with Britain, for instance, think there's no reason why the vicar's daughter and the property mogul shouldn't get on.
The president is a very charming, engaging individual. When you meet him one-on-one, he presents entirely different than he does publicly, which is not uncommon in the business that we're in. I think they're going to get along really well.
But on an official White House briefing paper for the Prime Minister's visit, they spelt her name wrong. In this special relationship, it is still early days.
Andy, what can we really expect from those talks between Donald Trump and Theresa May?
Well, on the British side, it's certainly true that Theresa May would hope to hear some positive noises, some encouraging words about a possible bilateral trade deal between the UK and the US. Donald Trump has already said that he is well disposed to that idea, and certainly that would help the UK in terms of going into future negotiations with the EU. But there's a message coming back from the other side as well, from Theresa May, and it was very evident in her speech yesterday, which is that she is concerned after all the talk, especially at the inauguration speech from the President, president about America first, about protectionism, about essentially looking inwards, if you like, on behalf of the United States under his leadership. She is keen to say America must not step back from its role of global leadership, and if America steps up for global leadership, then Britain will be there at America's side. We'll be hearing a press conference from the two leaders in about an hour's time, and I'm sure we will hear more about these issues then.
Indeed. Thanks so much, Andy. Well, you can watch the full press conference between Theresa May and Donald Trump live on our Facebook page at 6 o'clock. Just search for C5 News. We'll also have the highlights and analysis from Washington on 5 News tonight at 6:30. Now, the number of cancelled urgent operations has risen to a record high. In England, that figure is now over 4,000. That is up 8% from the year before and up 27% since 2014. As our health correspondent Catherine Jones reports, all of that is having a knock-on effect.
Bruce's life is on hold. He's fighting pancreatic cancer, but the surgery that should have removed the tumour has twice been cancelled, the second time just half an hour before the operation.
Obviously, you feel gutted because you've worked yourself up to having the operation.
It's our life stopped really because of the cancellation, and feel very upset about it.
Not something that's a nice feeling to have, knowing that it's still in there when it needn't be, for lack of a bed.
Hospitals struggling to free up beds is now a nationwide problem. So with our help, Bruce asked England's chief nursing officer what's causing it.
Why is there a lack of acute beds when they're needed most, especially in the winter times?
Organisations open extra beds and have extra capacity.
But it's clearly not enough. His operation's been cancelled twice.
Clearly for him that is an absolutely awful thing to go through, and I can only apologise because it must be devastating for him and his family. We have had a significant increase in demand, and we've had a
Not an unpredicted increase in demand. You knew people were getting older. You knew people were getting sicker. You knew social care had been cut.
We predicted an increase. We knew it would happen. I think what's happened this winter is that we've seen more than we had predicted. We've had an increase in A&E attendances, we've had an increase in emergency admissions, and we've had an increase in the number of people that are fit to leave hospital but have been unable to.
And that means not only the scrapping of some urgent operations, but also a growing backlog of cancelled non-urgent surgery.
There will be a price to pay for that later when they will have to catch up with that, which may include having to pay very high overtime rates to their own staff and doctors to come in and do that surgery, or to buy it from the private sector to fill the gap.
Bruce has a new date for his surgery in a fortnight. But as hospitals battle to clear their backlogs of operations, many patients like him will continue to feel the impact.
Well, Catherine's here with me now. Catherine, there's also concerns today that patients in some areas being denied more routine operations like hip or knee replacements even.
That's right. It's come to light that in order to cut costs, health officials in the West Midlands have tightened the criteria to even get on the list to get an operation for a knee or hip surgery. And basically, the patient is going to have to be in more pain or perhaps less able to move before their GP will be allowed to pass them on through the system. Now, the health officials say they were spending more on operations than around the rest of the country, and all they've done is bring themselves back down to the average. They even point out some parts of England have stricter rules than that. That, of course, has made the Royal College of Surgeons say, look, this is creating a postcode lottery of where you are, determining what care you get. It really is just another stark example of how hard it's becoming to balance the needs of individual patients with the needs of everyone else, and to do that against this background of spiralling demand and soaring problems with the finances.
Kathy, thank you very much for that. Thank you. Jeremy Corbyn is facing a growing rebellion from Labour MPs over his stance on Brexit. He's told his party they must vote to give the go-ahead for Theresa May to trigger Article 50 and start the 2-year negotiating period with Brussels. But today, one of his senior MPs says she's quitting his shadow cabinet because she believes Brexit is a terrible mistake. Well, Simon Vigar is at Westminster for us now. Simon, what more can you tell us about this?
Well, Jo Stevens was the Shadow Welsh Secretary, Julian. She's the MP for Cardiff Central, and she says that it's a clear issue of principle and conscience. She is not going to trigger Article 50. She's going to defy the three-line whip, which is the party instruction. Tulip Sadiq, another frontbencher, she has resigned from the Shadow team. And two party whips who are meant to enforce discipline, they say they are going to vote against it. Labour's big problem is that while most of the MPs voted Remain, most of the constituencies voted Leave. And there's a big minority of Labour MPs who refuse to trigger Article 50. They believe Brexit will be a disaster, and in a few years' time they want to be able to say, don't blame me, I didn't vote for it. Problem for Jeremy Corbyn is, before he became leader, he spent a career on the backbenches defying three-line whips.
Simon, thank you. Coming up on 5 News, we hear from the woman whose life was saved by doctors who removed her lungs for 6 days. And we catch up with Ant and Dec as they get their OBEs at Buckingham Palace.
If you told us 25 years ago when we first met that we'd be at Buckingham Palace receiving these from His Royal Highness, I don't think we would have laughed you out of Baker Grove.
We'll see you after the break. Welcome back. You're watching 5 News. Her love, laughter and singing, which delighted us all, no longer fills every corner of our home. Those were the words of 4-year-old Mitzi Steady's mother in court today. Her daughter was killed when a lorry went out of control in Bristol due to faulty brakes. Mitzi died along with 3 other people. A lorry firm owner and a mechanic have been jailed for manslaughter after failing to carry out proper safety checks. Layla Hayes reports.
4-year-old Mitzi Steady was described in court as a bright, lively, beautiful little girl. But 2 years ago she was killed in an accident which the court heard should never have happened. She was one of 4 people who died when a 32-ton tipper truck crashed into cars and pedestrians as it travelled down a steep hill in Bath. Mitzi was crossing the road with her grandmother, who survived but had to have both legs amputated. Today, Mitzi's mother told the court her family are now distraught, and many were in tears as she read out a statement. In it, she said, "My husband and I are heartbroken that Mitzi will not get to live her life to the fullest, will never have her first day at school, learn to read, have best friends to giggle and play with. The list is endless." Also killed that day were 59-year-old father Robert Parker, 52-year-old grandfather Philip Allen, and 34-year-old Stephen Vaughan. Stephen's wife Sian told the court they had only been married 6 months before the crash, and at the age of 33 she became a widow. The truck's driver, 20-year-old Philip Potter, seen here at an earlier appearance, was cleared of all charges after the court heard the truck's brakes had failed. But 30-year-old haulage boss Matthew Gordon was sentenced to 7.5 years for manslaughter after the court was told his company failed to carry out correct safety checks. 55-year-old mechanic Peter Wood was sentenced to 5 years and 3 months.
Sentencing the 2 men, the judge said these were truly serious offences. He said the brakes of the truck were in an appallingly bad condition. They were cavalier about safety, he said, and their actions had devastated lives.
Police said they had a blatant disregard for safety.
As a company owner, Matthew Gordon had no transport manager and effectively flouted every regulation which had been put in place to ensure public safety and employee safety. His mechanic, Peter Wood, signed off vehicles as safe when clearly they were not.
Mitzi's mother told the court she now struggles to go on, and the pain for the families is so much worse knowing this tragedy could have been avoided. Layla Hayes, 5 News, Bristol Crown Court.
British Airways cabin crew will walk out in a further 6 days of strikes next month. The union Unite says it's a dispute over pay. The strike will take place on the 5th, 6th and 7th of February and again for 3 days from the 9th. It'll be the 3rd walkout this year by BA's so-called mixed fleet cabin crew. They went on strike last week, but the airline said only a small number of flights had to be cancelled. Tesco has announced a merger with food wholesaler Booker. Britain's biggest supermarket is to swallow up the cash and carry business in a deal valuing the company at £3.7 billion. Booker also owns thousands of convenience stores, including Premier, Londis and Budgens. It was a feat medical professionals didn't know was possible, surviving without lungs for 6 days. Melissa Benoit was dying, her lungs severely infected, when Canadian doctors took the difficult decision to remove them in the hope they could keep her alive until a transplant became available. Olivia Kinsley has the story.
So this is my daughter, Olivia, and this is my mom, Sue.
With her family by her side, Melissa Benoit and her new lungs are getting stronger.
Grandma. Yeah, that's Grandma, yes.
Melissa has been recovering from a groundbreaking operation. She had cystic fibrosis and went into hospital with a severe lung infection. It spread through her body and she fell unconscious, her organs shutting down. To save her life, the doctor's only option was to take her lungs out.
They put their own careers on the line. They took a chance just as much as we did. And my family, they followed what wishes I would have chosen, but they were brave to follow through with that in the face of such adversity at the time.
The medical team in Toronto kept Melissa alive for 6 days with pumps and machines while doctors searched for a double lung donor. Usually with a transplant, replacement lungs are put in within just a few hours.
It was clear to all of the physicians and surgeons involved that she wasn't going to survive that day. So it was really the only option we had.
She's been making a steady recovery, her husband Chris and 2-year-old daughter Olivia alongside all the way. The whole family are so glad they risked the operation.
I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for that procedure and my donor. Now I feel that that expiration date has been lifted, and essentially the sky's the limit. There's nothing really holding me back.
Now she has new lungs, new life and a new resolve to keep on fighting. Olivia Kinsley, 5 News.
Amazing. Now, the Queen has been greeted by warriors on a visit to Norwich. She was attending a visual arts exhibition about the cultural history of Fiji. It was her first official engagement since she had a heavy cold over Christmas. Now, from real royalty to the kings of entertainment. Normally, they are inseparable as the country's best-known double act. But today, Ant and Dec were forced to briefly split up. Don't worry, though. It was just for a few minutes, so the Tyneside TV stars could individually receive their OBEs. Prince Charles rewarded the pair for their services to broadcasting and entertainment. Dominic Reynolds was there.
We've known them by their nicknames for 20 years. But around here, it's a bit more formal.
Mr. Declan Donnelly, Mr. Anthony McPartlin.
The future king of the country today had OBEs for the kings of Saturday night. Ant and Dec have won an awful lot of awards over the years, but never awards like these.
What a special day. You know, if you told us 25 years ago when we first met that we'd be at Buckingham Palace receiving these from His Royal Highness, I don't think we would have laughed you out of Byker Grove.
But if you were thinking something felt a bit odd about this, it's because those OBEs were the wrong way round. They're handed out alphabetically by surname, so for one day only, Dec came before Ant.
How did that happen?
A break from tradition.
Yes.
It was Dec and Ant today. I don't know. It just happened in the roll call. I think the prince did a list of his favourites, and I was
descending order. Is that what it was?
Descending order.
Right,
Nothing to do with the alphabet.
Yeah. Rumbled again.
Switch it around, Dec and Ant from now on.
I think
Let's
now's
not
the time.
start. No.
If ever there was a time to do it, it would be now.
You've got to pounce.
Let's do it. Let's do this. Let's
Don't
do
you
this.
start trouble, you.
So we're going for chips then, if you like.
Dec was billed second even back in 1989 when they were PJ and Duncan on Byker Grove. They broke out of the kids' soap and into the charts for a few years. But they steered themselves into national treasure status as presenters of a string of hits like Saturday Night Takeaway and I'm a Celebrity.
If you were going to have a member of the royal family in the jungle, who's it going to be?
Who's it going to be?
Oh, it would be Prince Charles.
It
for
would
me.
be, yeah.
A very outdoorsy type.
Of all the flora and fauna, so he'd be in his element.
He'd be all right on those challenges?
Oh yeah.
He'd
be really
done
good.
worse.
We got to know him.
I don't know that for fact. I don't
What do you know?
We got to know him a bit when we shot the documentary with him. So he likes the outdoors, and he's got a very good sense of humour, which not many people see. I reckon he'd win it.
Charles tipped to the top. The Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh have been together for 70 years as
Yeah.
of November.
Oh, fantastic.
Is that going to be the same for you guys? 70 years in a relationship?
Well,
It's not the same kind of relationship, let's be honest.
What are we up to now? We're up to about 25?
Yeah,
about
25, 26.
25, 26, something
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that. We've still got a long way to go.
Exactly.
But they've come a very long way already. And you get the feeling these lads from Newcastle, side by side for a quarter of a century, haven't had their last trip to the palace. Dominic Reynolds, 5 News.
And if you want to see more of that interview with Ant and Dec, you can visit our Facebook page. Just search for C5 News. Before we go, here's what's coming up on 5 News tonight at 6:30. Why girls think they're not as talented as boys by the age of 6. I'll be discussing the study that suggests gender stereotypes kick in at an early age. Plus,
I had 105 years. I wasn't going anywhere.
the man who spent 23 years on death row in America, 22 of them in solitary confinement for a crime he didn't commit. Nick Yaris tells me about his story that's been turned into a film. And, of course, we'll be back live in Washington for the latest on those talks between Theresa May and Donald Trump. That is it for now, though. Chris Page has all the weather next, and I'll be back at 6:30. Thank you very much for watching. See you later. Bye-bye.